welcome to the Atari KongCast. I am your host, um, Matt Ari, or Atari Kong, whatever you would like to call me. And right now, this episode is actually going to be about a game. It's going to be about my all-time favorite Atari game, which is Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong was... actually, let me start from the beginning. Donkey Kong was probably the biggest arcade game of 1980 or 1981. um, and a lot of the information I'm going to say right now, a lot of it might not be true. Um, Not that I'm making shit up, but I might have my facts wrong. Like the years might be off a little bit. Please feel free to drop me a line and let me know if I'm full of shit or whatever. So anyway, trying to remember the name of the arcade game. Anyway, Nintendo had this arcade game. I can't remember what it was called. It was like Radar Scope or something like that. Basically, the game was a total fucking bomb, and they needed to figure out what to do with all of these radar whatever cabinets. So they go to this guy uh, at who hadn't really done anything. Name, is it Shigeru Miyamoto? I think that's his name. Basically, he's like the grandfather of home video games. He created Mario and Zelda, so he's kind of famous or whatever. So I should know his name better. Anyhow, he wanted to create a game. Now, a lot of you might already know this stuff. So if you know the stuff, just pretend you don't, or just know that this show is kind of focused towards people who've never heard this shit before, okay? So, anyway. He wanted to make a game that had like a story. It didn't want to just be like a one screen, you do this to win this. Like, he wanted to have a plot and everything. And around this time too, Nintendo was trying to get the rights to Popeye, to do a video game about Popeye. So I think that had kind of a lot to do with this. But basically, he took the idea of Popeye, Beauty and the Beast, and shit, what was the third thing? I can't remember. Sorry about that. Yeah. So basically, I mean, the main thing here is Popeye and Beauty and the Beast, but basically, he came up with a story. He wanted to have a plot. He wanted to have cut scenes in between that kind of put the story along a little bit further. And he made this game where that he originally wanted to call, I guess, Stubborn Gorilla, but that isn't very marketable. So he looked up words apparently that were kind of synonymous with the words. So when he looked up stubborn, he found donkey, and when he looked up gorilla, he found Kong, and so Donkey Kong is what the game ended up being called. So basically, this giant monkey named Donkey Kong kidnaps this girl who originally was named the Lady, who ended up being named Pauline, which we'll talk about in a little bit. He carries her up this scaffolding, and then this guy, who originally his name was Mr. Video, and then name was changed to Jumpman, to kind of play on the whole Pac-Man and Walkman and other catchy, famous things of the era. And so Jumpman had to jump barrels and climb ladders to get to the top to rescue Pauline. And then Donkey Kong would go, yeah, right, and start climbing up again. And now he's in like a different place. And the original arcade game had 4 levels, and it was let's see if I can remember this. It was the ramps, the main level, and then there was like this weird like factory place, and then there was a level with more elevators, and then the one with the rivets and the springs and all that shit. I think I said that right. Okay. What's going on here? Okay. It's got some Twitter action here. So anyway, um, it has these 4 screens, and I think you could go 22 times, and on the 22nd time, on the last screen, um, because of some weird glitch in the arcade game, that's like the kill screen. Like, you take 2 steps and Mario dies. And that's kind of how you beat the game. Unofficially, but officially, whatever. So anyway, this was a huge hit. The idea of having a story with the game was super exciting and new. It was one of the biggest machines there were. I think they made 60,000 cabinets, and that might just be North America. So that's kind of strange. But the one thing too that's kind of interesting is that the Nintendo of America are the ones that named everything. So Pauline was named after some dude's wife. Mario, there was some dude who worked there named Mario, I guess. So they ended up giving Jumpman the name Mario. But the other thing that's really interesting about it is when you find out how Mario was made, because he was too small to have a mouth that was noticeable, so they put this big giant mustache on him. They needed to differentiate his arms from the rest of his body, so he had overalls on. So there was just all these little things like that that ended up making Mario look like Mario, that we know today. And all of it was like not even by accident, but just out of like necessity to try to make this little tiny guy look like something. So anyway, flash forward to a couple years later, and there was this bidding war to get the console rights for this game. And Taito tried to just buy Donkey Kong outright from Nintendo, like everything. We just want everything. And Nintendo's like, no, that's a pretty shit idea. We're not going to do that. And so, again, this is before Nintendo or the Famicom was available, so Nintendo didn't have a home system yet. So Coleco and Atari were hitting Nintendo up really hard trying to get the rights, and Nintendo ended up going with Coleco because they said Coleco kind of was more aggressive and needed it more or something like that. So anyway, Coleco has the rights for this thing. Now, Coleco had the ColecoVision at the time, and if you don't know anything about the ColecoVision, let me give you a little brief rundown of Coleco. Coleco was named because the original company was called the Connecticut Leather Company or something like that. So it was in Connecticut. They started making toys, and then those toys turned to electronic toys, and then those electronic toys turned into video games like home consoles, because after the Atari took off, a lot of people followed suit, like Mattel with the Intellivision and many other companies and machines. But anyway, so the thing that Coleco had above everybody else is that Coleco, the games that came out on a ColecoVision looked more like arcade games. Like, they had more memory, they looked better, but they also like flickered a bunch because you couldn't really handle all that information, but they looked really good. So anyway, so Coleco getting the Donkey Kong rights seemed like a pretty fucking good idea, probably to anyone in the world who knew a thing or two. So Coleco hired this guy named Gary Kitchen to make the Atari 2600 port. And since that's my console, that's what we like to talk about. And since Donkey Kong was my like favorite game growing up, This is very important to me here. So, Gary Kitchen goes to make this game, and he's just like, okay, so I have 4 kilobytes of memory, and I gotta put this giant fucking amazing game in here, and I don't know how the fuck I'm gonna do it. So, he's like making the game or whatever, and he couldn't make the ramps like diagonal like they are in the game, because the way the Atari screens would work, you would make stuff on like the right side or whatever, and then you could either double it or you mirror it. And if you double or mirror anything, you're still not going to have a ramp. And so he didn't know what to do. So originally, the game he made was just flat things that Mario would walk down and climb up, and the barrels would come down. And the next problem was that there wasn't enough space to do all 4 levels. So he hit up Coleco and he's like, "Hey, I need 8 kilobytes in order to make this game." They're like, "No, you can't have it. You could have 4." And that's that. So suck it. And he's like, "But I can't make the 4 levels." And they're like, "We don't care. We're going to sell 1,000,000 of these things through Atari anyway. It doesn't matter." And like, I'm thinking, they're probably thinking our game is going to be better. So they're going to look at our Donkey Kong and they're going to look at Atari's Donkey Kong. And obviously people are going to make the move over to us. So I feel like Coleco gave Gary Kitchen a really shit job to make the game that kind of kills Atari and makes Coleco look really good. But what they ended up doing was giving a guy who was super talented the ability to fucking make a really great game. So anyhow, what ended up happening was he saw that Activision was doing some amazing stuff. So he's like, "You know what? I'm going to need a job after I finish this game. I'm going to call Activision up and show them what I've done and see what happens." So he calls up Activision. The vice president of the company flies out to New Jersey to see him the next day when he finds out that he's making the Donkey Kong game. He shows him the Donkey Kong game, and the guy's like just totally impressed. And he's like, if you worked for Activision, those ramps would be slanted. That's all I'm going to say. And he walks off. And so that told Gary Kitchen that there was a way to make those ramps slanted. So he stayed up for days or whatnot, and he finally went through the code and figured out a way to make the ramps slanted. And that was just like, from what I gather, a very important moment that he was able to do that. And Coleco was getting pissed off. It was getting closer to Christmas when they wanted to launch the game. And they're like, you're going to have to come to Connecticut and just work here. And so he was in a fucking cubicle for like a week or something like that. And they wouldn't let him out. He got up probably to go to the bathroom and stuff like that. But he didn't really get up out of that cubicle until the game was done. And the executives kept coming by. "How's the game coming? How's the game coming?" And all this other shit. So it was very pressurized at the end. So, long story short, he makes Donkey Kong. And I, as a child, get Donkey Kong. And I, as a child, am very happy with Donkey Kong. And the 2 levels that you have on here are the main Donkey Kong level that everyone knows, that with the scaffolding and the ramps and all that stuff. And Donkey Kong's throwing barrels that look like honeycomb cereal. I always thought it was honeycomb cereal, and I didn't understand why. So, honeycomb cereal's coming at Mario, who's really Jumpman, who's really Mr. Video, and he has to jump over. And the thing that pisses me off, in the arcade version of Donkey Kong, you could stand still and jump over a barrel. In the Atari 2600 version, you can't just stand there and jump. You have to have a running jump. And that drives me fucking crazy. That would be the only thing I would change, plus getting the other 2 levels. But anyway, so once you make it all the way to the top, you go to the next level, which is the rivet level, where you have to walk or jump over these little things in the ground that are rivets, according to the manual. And then these fireballs, like in the arcade, the fireballs can move from floor to floor. In this one, they're only on their one level. So there's 4 fireballs. I always thought they were snails that moved really quick, and I couldn't understand why these snails were chasing me. Anyway, if you have watched me play this game on Twitch, you will know that my biggest nemesis is Fireball number 2. I absolutely hate Fireball number 2. He fucks me all the time. And on my I make shirts, like retro video game inspired shirts on Redbubble. I have a store over there. I even have like a shirt about how much I hate Fireball number 2. I fucking hate him. Anyway, so because Donkey Kong is like my jam and all that shit, I've been trying really hard to get like the highest score possible on it. And the highest score I've ever gotten, I believe, was like 88 or 89,000. But on Twitch, the highest score I've gotten, I think, is 68,000 something. So I will periodically be going back to that game on Twitch to try to get the big fucking score. And I'll do it one of these days. It'll happen. And everyone will be like, damn. And I'll be, uh-huh. Because that's just how shit goes. So anyway, I would love to hear what you guys think of Donkey Kong, and if you were, because this game is like hated by a lot of Atari fans. Like they just absolutely hate Donkey Kong because of what a kind of shit version of the arcade game it is. But I totally argue that. I think it's a great game. I think it's super fun. It's different enough to have it be something different, and it is super fun. The replayability on Donkey Kong is phenomenal. I've been playing that game for fucking 30 years, man. Like, that game is the shit. So anyway, so that's Donkey Kong. But please send me an email or a voice message or something to AtariKong@gmail.com, or even tweet me at AtariKong your what you think of Donkey Kong. And if you want to chat with me during the show, go to my Twitch page at twitch.tv/AtariKong and subscribe and put I can't remember what it's called. It's like the push feed or something like that, so you know when I'm doing the show, because I do the show at different times all the time. Or just follow me on Twitter and you'll know exactly when I go on. So that could be that. So yeah, that is Donkey Kong. So until next time, play some Atari today or something. Okay, so long everybody.